pretty good. Nintendo's stock prices have fallen rather dramatically over the last several months. Last August, they reached an all-time high. An all-time high for the company. Throughout their entire history, their stocks have never been worth just under $25 a pop. So, naturally, the Switch 2 had a really, really great launch, fastest selling console launch of all time, yada, yada. That drove a lot of confidence in the company. And, leading up to the holiday season in August, it reached that all-time high. After that, it kind of stabilized a little bit, but then leading up to the holiday, it kind of rose up again. But then right around here is where we had Black Friday. And it very quickly became evident that the Switch 2 was not selling the way that Nintendo was hoping it would. And at that point, things really, really took a downturn. Despite what some people would have you believe, the prices are not necessarily like in free fall right now. They're not plummeting. We can see, this is updated live. And when I first clicked on, I could see like, oh no, like every minute it is dropping. I'm watching it fall right now, but like it has ups and downs. It's gone down, it's gone up. And in fact, if you look at the 1 day, you can see here, if anything, it's actually gone up a little bit today. Started at 16, now it's like 16.10. You go back to 5 days. Yeah, ups and downs. So it's not crashing off a cliff or anything. But obviously that is a very, very big drop. If you look back to the all-time high, it's dropped about 33% since then. And yeah, don't get me wrong, 33%, that's a lot. That is 1/3 of the company's value tanking in the course of about 5 months. And it is a lot. But if you also consider that this was kind of inflated, this all-time high spike right here, if you look at this, the low $20 as a little bit more of a baseline, then from there, going back to the beginning of the 6-month period, then it's down about 24%. Okay, the last couple times I've clicked on, instead of just saying down 23%, it says up negative 23%. It's a very positive way to look at it. I admire the spirit here. You go to the investor meeting and you're just like, all right, everybody, we are up negative 23%. Wow, that's pretty good. But yeah, whether you're looking at the 33 or the 23, either way, that is a very significant downturn. And I must firmly establish right now, in case you didn't already know, and in case it wasn't already obvious, I do not have a deep understanding of these things, of the stock market. I do understand enough about the stock market. I've got like the basics down. I understand enough to know that in a sense, it is kind of nonsense. You know what I mean? Like it's driven by so many factors. It's supply and demand, but it's also very just like psychology based. It's just based on like people's confidence in a company. So it doesn't necessarily reflect what is going to happen. Right now people can lose confidence in a company and the value can drop, but then that company can turn around and do something amazing that generates a ton of profit and brings the prices back up again. So it fluctuates for a lot of silly reasons. The entire thing really is just a big game for the rich people to use to get even richer, but whatever. I guess that's beside the point today. The point is that confidence in Nintendo, as far as like investors are concerned, is currently dropping. There was a lot of hype leading up to the generation. And again, the launch was really, really great. But then a poor holiday season, now we know that like this year is going to be hard for the entire tech industry, and that may stall sales even more if prices have to keep going up. And also just Nintendo hasn't really been bringing the games. They haven't really been bringing these really big, huge, tentpole, broad audience reaching titles that are just like really driving sales. They haven't even made any big announcements for this year. Everything they've announced so far has been smaller stuff, and this is bringing the price down. It's getting, investors to sell their stocks. It's throwing off the supply and the demand, so that is leading to a pretty significant drop. Look at that. It's actually dropped a good few cents even just since we've been talking. It's going down a little bit. It'll probably go up a little bit. Yeah, whole thing is silly. So yeah, that is a really big drop, but there are a lot of different ways to look at this. A lot of, good newses and bad newses. I mean, depending on who you're, like, from Nintendo's perspective, maybe you're happy that the stock prices are going down, and it's good news. But from Nintendo's perspective, good newses and bad newses. Hey, sorry to interrupt. I promise this will be quick. I just wanted to remind everyone that if you're looking to support the channel, the best way is through my Patreon. For only $2 a month, you gain access to exclusive content and the official Arlo Stuff Discord server. But I also want to let you know that if you don't feel like going through Patreon, I just enabled YouTube memberships. The tiers and the perks are all the same, though you won't have access to the backlog of posts, so you'll have to wait for the upcoming new ones. Thank you so much to my existing members. You cannot possibly fathom how much your support means to me. I've said it before and I will keep saying it. I genuinely have the best fan community on the entire internet. Okay, that's it. Thanks again. Back to the video. 33% from 5 months ago is really, really huge, but we really do have to consider how this was very inflated. Again, it's all nonsense. So much of it is based on psychology and, this mix between fear and greed. And so just like this was artificial right here. This was something of a baseline, but even that was probably inflated because, when in doubt, zoom out. The picture becomes more clear when you zoom out to the last 365 days. Okay, yeah, you can see a lot of peaks and valleys. Right here is when the Switch 2 actually launched, and we kept getting all these stories about how well it was selling, so there was kind of like an upward climb, and right here is the all-time high. Wow, everything is really, really great. But before that, and leading up to the launch, like, look at this, even just 1 year ago, their stock prices were at 15, which is a lot lower than that all-time high. But like, that's how you can tell, like, this was very, very inflated, because now, okay, well, maybe it was this the baseline? What even is a baseline? If we were thinking just a second ago that this was the baseline, then we'll know now maybe it's something more like this. Okay, well, let's zoom out even more. Let's go to the 5 years, and oh, wow, yeah. Leading up to the next generation of Nintendo hardware, the stocks were inflated like absolute mad. Because, like, the entire Switch generation was seen as very successful. Nintendo's stock prices were very, very good compared to where they have been in the past, especially during times of struggle. So even just 5 years ago, they were at 15, and then kind of like getting later in the generation, there just weren't as many really big releases, and the market was becoming a little bit saturated. So it did dip down a good bit. I mean, that's a 33% drop right there from 15 to 10. Like, that's pretty darn low. But like back in 2023, nobody was like, oh no, Nintendo share prices have like totally tanked. Like, no, this was still okay. And around this time, maybe some of this was, if anything, like Tears of the Kingdom was kind of what was keeping this afloat. And then going into 2024, that's when the whole Switch 2 hype machine really kicked into overdrive. We had an entire year of just kind of anticipating that any second Nintendo was going to announce it. And then once they actually did, once they finally officially announced the Switch 2 and started showing it off, boom, this enormous peak here. And if now, looking at the bigger 5-year picture, if around here between 10 and 15 is a little bit more of our quote-unquote baseline, then right now the stock prices, if anything, are just normalizing. They're normalizing after this giant peak. They're heading back down to that 15 mark there. But like, okay, how normal was even this? How normal was this here compared to okay, let's go max. Zoom out all the way. Right here, we are looking at the entire history of Nintendo, at least when they, I don't know, when these systems were put into place, and I don't know, maybe when Google started tracking. I don't know past this point where it goes. But at least for now, just for reference, 98, that was in 64 days. And yeah, it was pretty low, 250. Certainly wish I'd bought there. And, it went up a little bit, and then there was the GameCube, and it went down quite a lot. But then Nintendo's first very, very, very big spike after the 2000s, this was the Wii. This was the Wii spike, and even there, we see that this was very artificially inflated because the Wii was successful for its entire life, but it was not replaced until about here. This was the Wii U. And but even then, like from the all-time high at the time, it dropped a lot, even as the Wii continued to sell really, really well. But then this kind of became the new baseline, and then the Wii U, boo, everything went way, way down, back to where they were back in the 90s. This was very, very, very low. Then during these years here, the Wii U continued to struggle, but I imagine that this growth is probably just thanks to the 3DS. The 3DS did really, really well. It sold a lot of units, a lot of software. So that was pretty much what was keeping Nintendo afloat. And even then, there were kind of ups and downs. And then look at that. Hey, they announced the Switch. It looks really good. The Switch launches, and now you have another kind of artificial peak that then kind of drops again. But then what happens, we get a global pandemic, and then there's this enormous boom, which of course we saw across the entire industry. You know, every major video game company has a spike just like this in 2020. But even that was short-lived. These kinds of spikes, they do not last forever. They just don't, because it's all speculation. It's all based on the boom and the bust and like, oh, is this the thing to buy? No, it's the thing to sell. So yeah, even that evened out, just like every spike, every single spike that we've seen, every significant spike has evened out. And so right now we're kind of following this same trajectory here between 2020 and now, just looking at the last 5 years. Like, you know, if this was something of like a new baseline, this was still Nintendo performing very, very well. You know, being at the $10 mark, this was still great, especially as the generation went on and there were fewer of those like enormous games, but it was still doing really well. Nintendo still making, you know, money hand over fist. The Mario movie gave them a bunch of money, and they started expanding out into more merchandising and all that stuff. So that has certainly helped. So yeah, again, the point is, this right here was very artificial. But that is not to say I'm not trying to completely dismiss these woes here. I'm not saying like, oh, this is nothing. This isn't even worth looking at. Like, no, this really does represent a change in the whole Nintendo ecosystem, especially as far as the shareholders and then the stock prices go. This is a real happening. So if the good news, again, from Nintendo's perspective, is that this is just kind of natural, and this is kind of just how it happens, this was inevitable after this massive spike, it was never going to stay up at $25. But like at the same time, I think the bad takeaway here is that this might not be the end of the drop, because when you have an all-time high that is that inflated, naturally you're going to see a pretty big drop. And I don't know, for all we know, this could even out right here, and this could, or it could spike again. But I think, you know, just me, a guy who doesn't know much about this stuff, and I've outlined this in other videos going out this month. You know, I've got an upcoming video that's going to talk about it in a lot more detail, but I think there are rough waters ahead. I think this may not be the end of the drop. Going into 2026, things are only looking bad for the tech industry. Only bad. And of course, for like every industry, for the entire economy, we only see prices going up. The AI data centers taking up all the RAM, all of the just like hardware components are going to raise in price. That means, if anything, products are only going to raise in price, and people are only going to get stingier. This last holiday was really poor for a reason, and like that reason is not going to change. If anything, it's just going to get worse. So I think, yeah, a lot of investors are getting spooked. Spooked is the big word. They are getting spooked, and they are pulling out, they are selling. And this, of course, often has a knock-on effect where that's why you have these really steep peaks and valleys, because if the prices start to fall, people who are invested are like, oh no, my money, I'm losing money right now, I should sell before it drops even more. And that lowers the price even more. So it drops off a cliff sometimes. And if this keeps up, it could, like, that could be more and more negative momentum that kind of builds up and makes it drop even more steeply, and even by even more percents. And I mean, look at this going down. It's going down right now. Oh no, We're plummeting. We're falling off a cliff. It's down to 1605. Where did we start at the start of the video? Somewhere over here. Oh no, 1604. Yeah, and the thing, yeah, and I've talked about it again and again, even just in this video a minute ago. But like, Nintendo just has not instilled confidence within anyone. They have not really announced big games. You know, like, sure, Pokemon Gen 10 is coming this year, and I really do think that that is going to have an impact. But what's between then and now? Like, what do we have until then? You know, I'm sure Nintendo is going to announce some games this year, and maybe even big ones. And I don't know if this is gonna maybe kind of spur them to announce some games earlier than they wanted to. You know, they want to build up confidence again. So if they have a really big project that's not going to come out for a year or two, could this potentially kind of get them, okay, well, maybe we should announce it just a little bit early to build up some of that confidence. But of course, that's only going to go so far, because if it's like, oh, new Smash, okay, when? 2028? You know, like, that's not gonna instill that much confidence. So that's kind of a tricky tightrope to walk. But I think we can be confident that there are not going to be any major system driving releases for the next like half year at least. It's gonna be like the latter half of 2026, if anything. And so between now and then, what is changing this? If things are only getting scarier, people are only getting more stingy with their money, less and less able to purchase these unnecessary luxury items, and if prices even keep going up, what's gonna change? You know, like, why wouldn't it just keep dropping? And people are gonna keep selling the stocks, and they're gonna have less and less confidence, which drives even less and less confidence. I don't know. I ain't no expert. I ain't no analyst, but I just feel like we have basically every reason to believe that it's going to just keep going down. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe there is enough just kind of like existing confidence in Nintendo just because the Switch generation was so successful. Maybe now people are like, all right, like, it's gonna come back. They're not gonna pull another Wii U. In the past, a lot of their problems have been providing products that just didn't really meet the needs and the wants of the people. And of course, like, having their hardware split between home console and handheld, that was a thing. Just the very idea that they combined those two has set them on a really good track. And you know, yeah, the Switch 2, it's not another Wii U. It's a great system. It's pretty much exactly the system that they needed to give us. And they have provided a lot of really great games over these last like 8 years. So like, Nintendo gave us a good product. It's gonna have a good life overall. And we know that the games are coming. We know that Nintendo knows how. They didn't just like forget overnight how to make a great game. So yeah, it could be that that existing confidence will keep this from dropping too far. You know, when prices start to fall, people get spooked and they want to sell so that they don't lose too much more money. But you could look at it the other way too. You know, people are like, oh yeah, but like, if I sell, what if it spikes again? You know, like that, you don't want to miss out on another spike, and they're Nintendo. That's what's so weird about Nintendo in particular when you look at their stock prices. You know, like, I've looked them up before because they have these big peaks and valleys, and you know, I'll go on like posts and just people being like, is it a good idea to buy Nintendo like when they're down? And the general consensus is it's very risky because they're such wild cards. They're the kings of left field. You never know what they're gonna do, and they are equal parts genius and inept. Like, it's just like, that's just the truth. One day they will give us some crazy product that no one had ever considered before, and yet it just sets the world on fire and it makes them $1 trillion. And then the next day they'll do something so stupid, so short-sighted, so they live in this weird little insulated world. You can't predict what they're gonna do, and that's why these things happen. So maybe a lot of investors will want to hold on to their stocks because they just don't know what's going to happen. And I suppose we could look at we could ask ourselves the question, if we are seeing a big drop and if it continues to drop, does that mean that this is a good time to invest in Nintendo? I mean, you know, and I don't like that idea. I do not like this whole system. I've never invested in the stock market, even though I realize I probably should. Maybe I don't know. I don't want to engage with any of this. This is so much of the reason why this, and by that I'm gesturing all around me to everything, is the way that it is. So I don't like the idea, but it's like, I don't know. I gotta eat, like I gotta eat. So is it a good time? Or will it be a good time if it drops too much lower? Or maybe is this like so artificially inflated that it's going to drop back down to here and this is going to be the new baseline? And even if you can expect that Nintendo, they have their highs and lows. So maybe even it is inevitable that there will be another spike. Imagine you bought around here at like 10 and then you sold at the all-time high. Well, you've like more than doubled your money. That's crazy. And so, okay, the next time there's a spike, there will be another spike. There are always spikes. But how long are you going to be waiting for that? Because look at this. That's a really big gap between spikes there. Of course, that was before they incorporated handheld and home console again. Maybe you could argue that this is more regular now. They're not going to have any wild failures like they did with the Wii U. I think things maybe will probably stabilize. I really don't know though. It's impossible to say. They could drop so much more. They could come all the way back down to 10, and you could buy there, and then it could just stay there. Maybe the peaks and valleys will be a little bit less because the Switch itself was kind of like, it was a big cultural phenomenon, and like, does Nintendo have any more of those in them? Is that even possible just in today's gaming landscape when innovation has just kind of slowed to a crawl? There really isn't much more to innovate on anymore. You just got to focus on making games that people want to buy. Maybe we won't ever see a spike like this again. It's possible that it never will. And that's the thing about this whole Switch to Switch 2 thing. Previous success does not guarantee future success. I mean, yeah, the Switch was a crazy thing, and everyone was all super confident in the Switch 2. And yet, like, I don't know. Things happen. Nintendo makes mistakes. The market, the consumer base changes, the overall global economy changes, the psychology changes, everything changes. So there are simply no guarantees. So I really don't know. If this was an artificial spike, this could be artificial as well. This could be mostly hype-based. Nintendo could settle back down into a comfortable area right down here. And that's not to say they're not making great money. Switch 2 could still be a really great success. Really, really great success. They could still be putting out games that sell tens of millions of copies, but it's not this like big, hype-driven, shareholder exciting machine. They may hit just something more of just kind of a stable equilibrium. And if that's the case, even if you buy down here, you might not necessarily make any money at all. Or you buy at 10, and then there's another spike, and you double your money. I don't know. That's like the stock market itself is already, so I've only just recently started to learn about this stuff. Like I just learned what index funds are, and that's seen as like the safer way to invest. If you're looking at investing in individual companies, it's already so incredibly high risk. And then even more so with Nintendo, even more so with a company like Nintendo, because they're just so ridiculously unpredictable. Okay, where are we at for today? We're still dropping. Oh no. 16.14 down to 60. We've dropped 10 cents just since I started recording this video. Oh no. We're in trouble. So those are my thoughts. If anything that I've said is worth anything whatsoever, I don't know, but at the very least, that's the way that I see it. So yeah, again, I think it's not that Nintendo is crashing and burning right now. Things could stabilize. They could go back up again, I suppose. But I personally foresee probably more dropping in the future. Yeah, because again, like we don't know what Nintendo's got in store. Now, okay, now to be fair, February is coming up. And in February, they will have a big Nintendo Direct, I have no doubt, because we still need to know what other games are coming this year. They could announce some big game. They could announce Smash, for all we know. I don't know. I don't have super high hopes, but that would be a very, very good game to announce. And then we're also going to get Pokemon Day, and I think there's a really good chance that Pokemon is going to announce Gen 10 at that time. So even if we don't think that sales are necessarily going to pick up until those games release, closer to the end of the year, it's possible that just the announcements themselves could help. So like this could change next month. Maybe this is the time to buy. Maybe when you buy at 15 and then it's going to go up to like 20 or something next month. I kind of have my doubts, but that could instill a little bit more confidence that, okay, it's going to be some time before these games release, but they're coming. We got 2 really, really big games on the schedule coming this fall, this winter. But yeah, so that just makes it even harder to decide if right now, especially if it drops more, is that a good time to invest? I don't know. I don't have any. I'm not going to invest. What am I going to invest? Let's be honest. What have I got to invest? Yeah, let me empty my savings account and then lose it all when it drops even further. No, not going to do that. Do you take eShop gift cards? I think I got a couple of those in a drawer somewhere. I found a Red Robin one too. I don't know how much is on it. But does that help? Can I trade those for some stocks?